I could hear them laughing, his deep chuckle, her high-pitched giggle, somewhere beyond the pine trees. Meanwhile, I was crouched behind a rock, my thigh torn open from a fall, blood soaking into snow as cold wind bit through my coat. Jett Harrow was trending for carrying his co-star to the ER. No one knew his wife spent the night bleeding alone on a frozen mountain. I used to save his image, now I save myself. Where are you listening from tonight? Tap subscribe if you believe silence can be louder than any scream. Frostmore Ridge was the kind of town where the silence had weight. Even the snowflakes landed softly as if afraid to interrupt. It used to feel romantic. Now it just felt empty. I met Jett Harrow before the fame, back when he was just another temp actor auditioning with shaky hands and a cracked headshot. I was a stylist for a low-budget commercial. He showed up with a button missing, and I sewed it back on without being asked. He smiled like I'd saved his life. That night we talked for hours over burnt diner coffee. He said he had no family, no plan B, just one shot at being someone. I didn't mean to fall for him, but I did. Hard. We moved in together within months. Then came the offers, a supporting role here, a villain there, and soon a lead in a gritty crime series that launched his name. When the studio insisted he stay single for the fans, he turned to me and said, "You know we're real. That's enough, right?" I said, "Yes." So we married quietly in the Canyon Chapel just outside Vegas. No photos, no flowers, no press. His star rose, and with every interview, every late shoot, every red carpet, I faded. I became the shadow behind the icon. The stylist, the assistant, the plus one. No one knew I was the woman washing his shirts, prepping his supplements, scheduling his appointments, stitching his suits. Then came her, Lyra Monroe, big eyes, soft voice, drama school classmate. She was always good, Jett said once, almost dreamily. Back then, she had no idea how radiant she was. I wanted to ask, and now? But I didn't. I watched from the sidelines as tabloids started calling them the comeback couple of the screen. She called him Jay. Only I knew that nickname came from a campfire night in Oregon, when we promised to keep each other warm forever. Funny, isn't it? Now she wore his coat. She brought him fresh pressed juice. She said lines I'd heard him practice 100 times, with me. They called it chemistry, I called it rehearsal. And me, I was still the one stitching his shirts, but I had stopped fixing loose buttons. Cut again, please. Jett Lyra reset. It was the third time the director called it. The crew shuffled awkwardly, some avoiding eye contact. But Jett didn't move, neither did Lyra. Their lips stayed locked in a kiss that had long passed the line between acting and something else. Her fingers curled into his collar like she was drowning and he was air. I stood at the edge of the soundstage, clipboard in hand, heart beating far too loud for a scene I'd watched rehearsed a dozen times. When they finally broke apart, Lyra blinked, then suddenly burst into tears. "I'm sorry," she gasped. "It's just, I got so into the role. I couldn't come back out." The set fell silent. Even the camera operator stopped moving. I stepped forward. "Maybe we can take 5, I said gently. Lyra buried her face in Jett's chest. He held her close, rubbing her back like it was second nature. Then he turned to me and his face changed. Cold, sharp, familiar. "Rowena," he said, his voice loud enough for the whole crew, "your eyes are so clouded with jealousy, you see filth in everything." I froze. Someone dropped a prop in the background. No one picked it up. I felt the eyes, the judgment, the whispered thoughts. "Isn't she just the assistant? What's her deal?" "I was just suggesting a break," I said softly. Jett waved me off. "This is a professional set. Don't bring your insecurities here." Lyra sniffled like she'd been struck. She whispered something to Jett and he nodded like she was the one who needed comfort. I turned away. Outside, the air hit like glass, sharp, dry, biting through my jacket. But it was nothing compared to the chill that had settled in my chest. He'd embarrassed me, publicly, unapologetically. And Lyra, she cried on cue. That night, the headlines hit faster than I could brew tea. Jett Harrow and Lyra Monroe spotted entering luxury hotel, alone after hours. Fans react, is this the real love story behind the screen? The photos weren't subtle. Jett in a black hoodie, Lyra in a silk dress that didn't cover much. Different entrances, same exit, 2 hours apart. But the smiles said everything. Back in our rented cabin near set, I sat on the couch, phone glowing blue. Notifications stacked like falling bricks. I used to be the first to respond. Draft statements, send apologies, redirect the headlines. PR spin was an art I mastered for him. But not this time. I let the screen dim, let the speculation burn on its own. He walked in past midnight, reeking of hotel shampoo and champagne. I didn't even look up. "Don't you have anything to say?" he asked, tossing his keys on the table. I shrugged. "You're trending. Congratulations." Jett narrowed his eyes. Nothing happened. We were just rehearsing lines. At a hotel, I asked, still not meeting his gaze. There were fans outside the studio. We needed privacy. I almost laughed, but I didn't. He dropped onto the couch beside me. You've always had a vivid imagination, Ro. It's exhausting. There it was, that old tactic. Make me feel insane for noticing what was clearly real. I stood and walked to the kitchen. I made your chamomile, I said without turning. But if it's exhausting to be with me, maybe you should rest elsewhere. Behind me, silence. Then a mutter. You know, Lyra cried for an hour after that scene today. I turned. And you hugged her, in front of everyone. She's sensitive, he said. She's not the only one, I replied. For a split second, something flickered in his eyes. Guilt, maybe. Or fear. I was finally seeing clearly. But it vanished. He picked up the teeth, took a sip, grimaced. This tastes like regret, he said, smirking. I looked him dead in the eye. Maybe it is. They said the shoot would be quick, just a few scenes in the woods close to base camp. But nothing was ever quick when Lyra was involved. By mid-afternoon, she was wrapped in Jett's jacket, sipping herbal tea, and swatting the air dramatically. Oh no, she gasped, lifting her arm. I think I got bitten again. I bruised so easily. I watched her pout, then watched Jett bend down to inspect her wrist, like she'd just been grazed by a bullet. The director tried to push on, but Lyra leaned into Jett and whispered, and suddenly we were on hold. We're heading back to base, he announced, cradling her like a wounded bride. No one questioned it. I stayed behind, helping gather leftover props. No one noticed I hadn't followed, not even Jett. The sun dipped early that time of year. One misstep on a slippery route, and I went down hard. Pain shot through my leg, hot, sharp, nauseating. I rolled over and saw blood seeping through my pants. A piece of splintered wood was lodged in my thigh. No cell service, no flashlight. Just wind through pines and the distant echo of engines pulling away. By nightfall, I was curled under a pine tree, hugging myself against the cold teeth chattering. Somewhere out there, Jett was probably spoon-feeding Lyra soup. He might have even posted a checking on my girl story. And me, I was gripping a branch for defense, watching two red eyes blink at me from the shadows. I prayed it was just a fog. I stayed awake all night from pain, from fear, from the slow splintering realization I could disappear and he wouldn't notice. At dawn, my phone buzzed, barely 1 bar of signal. His name flashed on screen. Jett, 3 missed calls. I answered. Sienna, he snapped, voice sharp. Where the hell are you? You've been ignoring me all night. Lyra's got bites all over. Go get her some antihistamines and… I interrupted, my voice hoarse. I'm on the mountain. Pause. Then you spent the night up there alone. I said nothing. He hesitated, tone softening. Stay put. I'll come get you. I waited and waited. He never came. By the time I limped back to set, the sun was high and the air thick with the scent of grilled meat and hairspray. Everyone had moved on, except me. I was bruised, freezing, and exhausted, but still when I reached the tent, Jett was there, waiting with a bag of takeout in hand. He tossed it on the table like it weighed nothing. Here, he said, I figured you'd be hungry. The bag sagged open, at the top half-eaten fries, a soggy burger bun, and something that smelled faintly like pickles and regret. I didn't touch it. You brought me leftovers. He cleared his throat. They must have mixed up the orders. Everyone was grabbing takeout at once. I raised an eyebrow. No one else here eats from paper bags with grease stains. He didn't answer, just shifted in place, pretending to scroll through his phone. Then, as if remembering something critical, he added, Oh, and Lyra's running a mild fever. Can you bring her some medicine later? I stared at him. He didn't look up. You know it's not great for my image to be seen at hospitals, unless it's an emergency, he muttered. No, I said. But frostbite must be great for mine. He blinked. What? I stepped closer. Do you remember last winter when Lyra insisted her clothes had to be hand-washed because of her germ sensitivity? Jett frowned. That was… You're overreacting. I washed them. Outside, in snow, in a nightgown. You offered, he said too quickly. She told you snow kills bacteria, and you said sounds holistic. He looked away. I lifted my hand, still raw, a faint scar across the knuckle. My fingers bled that night. I couldn't feel them for days. He scoffed, but softer this time. I didn't realize it got that bad. You never asked. Silence. I pulled the blanket tighter around my shoulders. I'm not going to the hospital, Jett. I'm not cooking. I'm not washing. I'm not cleaning up her mess anymore. He stared at me, stunned, like I'd just spoken in another language. You're not feeling well, he said finally. We'll talk later. I turned toward the exit, my voice like ice. No, you'll talk. I'll listen. That's how it's always been. Not anymore. And I walked out, leaving the bag of cold fries and the cold man who used to be my husband. The clinic smelled like antiseptic and jasmine. Someone had left a diffuser on, like scent could soften what was about to happen. I lay there staring at the ceiling tiles, counting them like heartbeats. 10 across, 12 down. The doctor's voice was kind, too kind. Miss Skye, are you sure you don't want to speak with the father? I shook my head. My throat felt like ice, my hands didn't shake. He wouldn't notice, I said. I meant it. Outside, the world spun on. Jett and Lara were trending again, this time for a behind-the-scenes clip. He lifted her in a Princess Carrie during a fake injury scene. Twitter called them a fairy tale come to life. I remembered another lift. 2 years ago. A stunt scene gone wrong. Lyra was afraid of heights. So was I. But Jett told me to do it. Don't be dramatic, he'd said. You're stronger than her. I wasn't. The harness slipped. I hit the rocks hard. My leg snapped clean. Lyra cried harder than I did. She got the sympathy. I got 6 pins and a limp. Jett visited once. He brought soup for Lyra. Her cat had scratched her. She needed comforting. I was in the room next door. He never stopped by. The doctor tapped my wrist gently. It's over. And just like that it was. I didn't cry. I didn't even flinch. Because something inside me had already died. And what came alive in its place wasn't afraid anymore. The day after the procedure, I put on lipstick. Not for him, for me. Cherry scarlet. The same shade I wore the night he first kissed me on a fire escape in Seattle. Before the fame, before the rot. I met Maxwell Phoenix at a quiet cafe off Highway 12. He was young, ambitious, bright-eyed. The kind of assistant Jett used to be grateful for. The kind that still thought celebrity meant something pure. We signed the contract over chai lattes. Sienna, sorry, Rowena. He corrected himself quickly. Are you really quitting? People would kill to work for Jett Harrow. I smiled. I'm getting old. You'll understand when it happens to you. He laughed, not knowing how right I was. Not knowing that a decade with Jett Harrow aged a woman twice as fast. Later that afternoon, I returned to the rental villa. Jett was on set. I had 2 hours. I opened the file cabinet where I kept everything: schedules, NDAs, call sheets, passwords. His entire professional life held together by my spine and staples. I made 2 copies, one to give to Maxwell, one to keep just in case. Then I moved to the cloud folder we shared. Deleted every trace of myself. No more RO tasks, no more row weekly, just silence. I left the assistant badge on the marble counter. It looked oddly small, like something a child might wear during pretend play. I didn't cry. Instead, I picked up my second phone, the one Jett didn't know about. The one I'd used when his fans got too close. I texted someone I hadn't spoken to in years. Sammy at Redline and Tunsal's, a tabloid pitbull who'd once begged for exclusives I'd always declined. This time I didn't decline. I sent him a clean headline. Star actor Jett Harrow spotted in midnight, embrace with co-star Lyra Monroe, truth or PR stunt. With it, a date-stamped clip, a still from the hotel camera, and one of Jett's own voice memos from earlier that week. She's sensitive, keep Lyra's fever off social. Last time it got out of hand. Sammy called in under a minute. Rowena Skye, you sure you want to do this? Absolutely. There was a pause. You never wanted the spotlight. I still don't, I said. But he built his spotlight with my hands. And he's not taking my silence with him. We agreed on terms, 50% of ad revenue, full control of release timing. And one condition, I'll give you more, Sammy. But I want final say on the headline that breaks him. You got it. I hung up, my hands weren't shaking. Outside, snow had begun to fall again. Not heavy, just enough to remind the world that silence too had a sound. The article dropped at 7:03 a.m. sharp. By 7:07 it was trending. By 7:10 Jett was calling me. I didn't answer. Instead I brewed tea. The good kind jasmine pearls that bloom in hot water, slowly like secrets unfolding. He called again. Then came the text. Vite. Rowena, please let's talk. You don't understand. This isn't what it looks like. I'm fixing it. I stared at the screen until it went dark. Across the room, Maxwell was sorting through Jett's color-coded wardrobe with military precision. He looked up nervous. Should I be packing the red carpet suits? I nodded. And the awards. Take them all. He'll need them where he's going. That night, Jett stormed into the villa. His face was pale, eyes bloodshot. Why are my things gone? His voice cracked between fury and disbelief. I didn't flinch. I'm handing over your assistant files tomorrow. You'll be briefed by Maxwell. He blinked. You're serious? I handed him an envelope. Inside the divorce petition, prenup amendments, court summons, and a flash drive labeled public assets. Sign it or see me in court. He tore through the papers like they were forged. They'll never believe you. I tilted my head. Believe me, Jett, I haven't said a word. The videos did. He fell into the chair like someone had shot him. You've destroyed me. No, I corrected. You destroyed yourself. I just stopped hiding the pieces. That same week, I moved into a smaller apartment downtown, bare quiet mine. I bought myself a couch, a proper bed, a British short-haired kitten with eyes like old bruises. I named him Calder. He followed me room to room, soft and silent. One morning, I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror, the curve of my spine no longer hunched. No more apologizing with my posture. I didn't smile, but I also didn't flinch. 3 days later, Jett's PR team tried spinning at rumors, fabricated by bitter ex-assistant. Except Sammy dropped the real hammer. A full compilation of private voice memos and silent security footage from the Villa Jett handing Lyra roses, slipping into her room at midnight, murmuring, "Keep this between us." The fans split. Some screamed setup. Others remembered the years I'd been in his shadow. One tweet went viral. Rowena Skye never asked to be worshipped. She just stopped pretending. Lyra posted a teary-eyed selfie and a 3-paragraph notes app apology. Too late, too staged. I spent that night on the balcony, Calder asleep in my lap. The sky over Frostmoor Ridge was clear for once. Stars like confetti, peace like armor. Jett texted again. "Come home." I blocked the number. I wasn't home. I was free. It started with a tweet. "Help, my wife Rowena Skye. My assistant has kicked me out. What should I do?" Attached one photo of Jett outside the villa, holding a suitcase and a bouquet of wilted roses. Another a close-up of our marriage certificate. Overnight, Jett and Row exploded across the internet. Some called it a love confession. Others called it PR manipulation at its worst. By morning, every entertainment outlet had one question. Who is Rowena Skye? They finally wanted to know. I finally let them. With a single repost, I captioned Jett's tweet, "Sign the papers, or show up in court." No third option. The silence that followed was louder than any apology he could have written. Within hours, I was offered interviews, book deals, podcast specials. I declined them all. This wasn't a campaign. This was closure. But Jett didn't see it that way. 3 nights later, he returned with a camera crew. I heard him outside before I saw him flipping through a leather-bound album, his voice shaking. "Rowena, do you remember this? The beach trip in Oregon? You made us peanut butter sandwiches. And this, our first Christmas. Just us, no tree, just a scented candle and microwave lasagna." He dropped to his knees, holding 2 plane tickets. "I rebooked our honeymoon. We never got to go. Please." Behind the gate, reporters were already crying. So were fans. But I wasn't. I opened the window just enough for my voice to carry. "You keep using the past to apologize for the present. But you never lived in the now, Jett. You lived in denial." He looked up, face red, eyes rimmed with salt. "She doesn't love you," he shouted. "Lyra, she used me, she's gone." I didn't blink. "You were never taken from me, Jett. You walked." That night, Lyra went live from a hospital room. A dramatic montage of Ivy's heartbreak music, tearful declarations of innocence. But no one believed her. 1 week later, Redline Ent dropped a 12-minute exposé. Behind the kiss, how fame blinds and love bleeds. Clips of Jett berating crew members. Snippets of Lyra mocking fans in private chats. One voicemail from Jett. "If she ever leaves, I'll make sure no one remembers her name." Too late. They remembered mine now. Brands dropped him, contracts revoked. His next 3 films shelved indefinitely. Lyra vanished from social media. Jett tried damage control again. Another tweet. Another tearful post. A short doc titled, "The Truth Behind the Tabloids." No one clicked. The final blow came a month later. I was walking Calder by the Riverside Trail when I saw him Jett waiting in line at a car wash. Disheveled, overweight, face hidden under a cap. His jacket had a hole in the sleeve. He didn't see me, or maybe he did and turned away. Calder meowed. I looked down. "Not today," I whispered. I walked past, head high. That night I saw the news alert. Breaking former actor Jett Harrow struck in hit and run. Vehicle registered to actress Lyra Monroe. I turned off the TV, picked up Calder, opened the balcony door. The sun had just set. The stars were starting to blink awake. "Look, baby," I said softly. "After all that fire, the sky still clears." Calder purred. And I knew I had already won. I never went back to Frostmoor Ridge. Too many ghosts. Too many footprints in the snow that no longer belonged to me. Instead, I stayed in the city, bought myself a second-hand record player, adopted a second cat gray like ash after fire. I named her Nova. Every morning I wake to silence. Not the kind that cuts, the kind that heals. Sometimes people still recognize me on the street. "You're Jett's wife, right?" I smile politely. "Not anymore." Sometimes they ask, "Was it revenge?" No, it was remembering I had a name, a voice, a spine. The world wanted a scandal. What they got was a woman who chose herself quietly, completely. Jett's name doesn't trend anymore. Lyra signed with a rehab-friendly agent. And me, I publish under a pseudonym now. Short stories, real ones, confessions dressed as fiction. No one knows they're about him. No one has to. Because power isn't always loud. And sometimes the most unforgettable exit doesn't come with fireworks. Just a closed door and the sound of your own footsteps walking forward. You ever had to walk away without burning anything, but still felt the world shake? What would Reddit say? Drop your vote. Subscribe for more stories that speak louder than screams.